new bedbug study, new scorpion in California, emerald ash borer in Georgia, and bedbug services, all on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business. Welcome to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Belated Happy Mother's Day to you all. I don't know if you're a mother listening to this, but I know I get a lot of women who are listening to this podcast now. The majority are men. But, if you're a mother, and you're raising your kids in this day and age, God love you, because it's not easy. And I tell you what, I believe I have the greatest mother in the world. And if I need to get inspiration and I need a motivation in my life, I only need to look to my mother for that. My mother is the greatest person, the person with the most perseverance and determination that I've ever met in my life. There's nobody that compares to my mother. And just to give you a little bit of background, we came to this country from Cuba in 1971, August of 1971. And my father and my mother immigrated here. I was 1 year old, and we went first to Florida. We landed here, then to Louisiana, and then eventually we ended up in Jersey. And we lived in West New York and Union City for about 7 years. And very, very tough on my parents, very tough on my mother, because we come from a tropical environment, and we get dumped into a snow environment where I remember as a kid, the snow would, my mother would bundle me up, typically like a Christmas Story guy, where the little kid falls down in the snow and he can't get up. And that's, kind of what I remember from my childhood living in Jersey. And when I got here, 5 years later, a week after my 5th birthday, my father dies, has an aneurysm, passes away, and my mother is left to raise me on her own in that city. Well, 2 years after that, she had enough and moved me to Florida. And I remember because it was on December 24th of 1977 that I remember spending Christmas on an airplane. And I remember the only gift that my mother was able to give me was basically a kit for working wood, and it had a saw, it had a hammer, and I still remember that toy to this day. And well, at about the age of 10, I get diagnosed with leukemia, and from that point on, my mother had to raise me by herself and deal with my problem until I was about 17. And my mother worked. She worked, and then she had to take care of me, and we couldn't work. We lived in government housing and on government cheese and on food stamps, and for about 10, 15 years of my life. And I remember my mother going to work, my mother starting up her own business. She cleaned houses for a living. She figured she could make more money cleaning houses than she could working anywhere else, because she didn't speak English. My mother came to this country very late in her life. She was 30-something, and she didn't learn the language. But she made it, and today my mother is 80 years old. I've never heard my mother complain about how life difficult has been. I've never heard my mother complain about how she can't deal with it anymore. If there's anything in my life that characterizes my life, it's not my success, but my perseverance. And I think I got that from my mother, where I will just persevere to the very end, and it doesn't matter how difficult it gets. We're going to get through it. And the other greatest mother in my life is my wife, who, between my mother and my wife, think I'm the world's greatest hero. And there's nothing that I can't do or get done in their eyes. And I don't know about you, but you can be a hero in the world. You can be very successful and be a total failure at home. And I choose to be successful at home even if the business world doesn't reward me as it should or as I think it should. But I want to thank you if you're a mother and you are raising children, and especially in this day and age where most mothers are raising kids on their own. Because the father, they're either divorced or the father is not in the picture. Very, very difficult. As a former youth minister and youth worker, I worked with youth for many, many years. I understand this. And this is where I guard a lot of my home life with my family, because I understand the importance of that. So happy Mother's Day to you all. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you. I thank God for the greatest mother in the world. And I know that sooner or later she will not be with me. It's just a part of life, and I've been preparing for that for many years now. And a lot of people, it takes them by surprise, but we know that that's a reality. If you don't have your mother with you anymore, my condolences to you, and the fact that you can rejoice in the fact that you had a great mother. And I think that is just vitally, vitally important to step back, appreciate those things in life in a hectic world of what we do in internet and in Facebook and things that take away from our life, that we could really, really focus on investing things and investing our time in the things that matter the most, and that's our family. So thank you. And I just wanted to do that for a lot of mothers today. Giving thanks to a lot of people who are following us in around the country. Rove Pest Control, at Rove Pest Control from Minnesota. They've got a great marketing piece. There are very few times that I see a piece of marketing that really makes me laugh. And they've got a tough guys need Rove too. And they've got a bodybuilder with a shoe in his hand and a spider dangling, and he's just crying because of the spider. And I just thought it was just brilliant. And take a look at it. Check it out at Rove Pest Control, all one word, on Twitter. Great page, guys. Also, Pestex, Bakerfield Termite and Pest Control in Bakersfield, California. Thank you for liking our stuff on Facebook, and thank you for that. Really appreciate it. We're going to be discussing some bed bug issues, but if you do a lot of inspections and you need to carry around a flashlight, I've tested a lot of headlamps, and I destroy a lot of headlamps. And one of the ones that I like the most is the Coast headlamp, the HL5. It's a 6-chip LED lamp, which has about 175 lumens. Very bright. I even can see inside attics. Very great headlamp. It's about $20. You can pick them up at Home Depot. I got a link to it. Check out that headlamp. I think it's a great tool. And I've used a lot of them. I've used them all the way from 6 to about, this is the most expensive one I've used. And, but it does last. I just finished buying one, and I've destroyed it because it fell from a very high place. And, I cracked the casing on it, and man, I'm almost cried because I lost that headlamp. But check it out. It's a very, very nice little piece. In the SEO front, one of the things about SEO is that it's like integrated pest management, it's integrated marketing. And there's not one thing that's going to work by itself to get you ranked. And one of the neat things about SEO is you get to use a lot of different things. And one of them is infographics. And infographics, to a lot of people, especially if you're not creative, it's a mind-boggling. There's software that makes it easier, but you still have to be creative. You still have to gather the data, and you still have to do it. And it takes you about 2 hours to design an infographic. And if you don't have that kind of time, then I'm going to suggest you farm that out to an artist and pay somebody to do it, but get somebody to design some good infographics for you. Probably one about every 3 months, 1 to 3 months, depending on your budget, would be good to put out there on your social media and on a page or something, and link it. And it's a great tool. Infographics are awesome tool. And if not, you can go to a place like Fiverr. And for like $20-25, say you can do one for $5, but you can't use it commercially. So if you want to use it commercially, you're going to have to pay for that. And it's about $20-25. And, every 3 months, maybe you can afford to do an infographic, a really good one, think it through, get it processed where you're going to get good information, and then, try it out and see what works for you. It's a great idea for SEO. And also, I want to talk to you about a great book that I love, which is the 80-20 Principle, The Secret to Success by Achieving More with Less, written by Richard Koch. That's Koch. And this book is based on the principle of discovered in 1906 by the Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. And I hope I did great on that Italian accent. And it's a mathematical formula where he discovered the unequal distribution of wealth in Italy and discovered that 20% of the people owned 80% of the wealth. Well, that's nothing new. That's still been the pretty much the status forever. And what he discovered, and what we've also been able to discover about the 80-20 principle, known as Pareto principle, is that most of the things in the universe work that same way. 20% of your clients will produce 80% of your income. 20% of what you do, what you spend your time on, produces 80% of your results. And it's a great book to help you understand where you're wasting time, where you're wasting resources. I mean, if you're putting ads out and you're getting $65 calls, you're probably wasting your time with that, because it's it's taking 80% of your resources to produce 20% of your income. You won't make any money that way. So it's a great book. I've listened to it several times. I love it. Check it out. Use our code. You can get that for free by going to audibletrial.com/pestgeek. You get a free trial and a free book. Download. This could be your first one. And check it out. And I think it's a great book. If not, just grab the book. And if you prefer reading, I prefer listening. I got to do plenty of reading on other things, but for enjoyment or information like that, I really do like listening. And on the pest alerts, we've got a new pest alert in Florida, in Miami-Dade County. As of 5/3/16, USDA APHIS has put out a quarantine area for giant African snail. And it's been established. I've got a link to the map, the quarantine map, so you can see those areas that are quarantined, and they're doing research there. But because of the high amount of giant African snail, and if you don't know about giant African snail, it's a big snail. The problem is it transmits diseases, and it basically eats your foliage and things like that. But the main problem with it is the disease that it transmits. So if you're down here in Florida, check it out so you can know. If you have customers in those areas, inform them they are in a quarantine area because there's a large amount of African snails. Also, a new Mexican fruit fly quarantine for the Zapata area, county, for Zapata County, Texas. There's also a quarantine map there for Mexican fruit flies. And what you got to understand about these fruit flies is that if people start moving the fruit out of those areas, especially in residential areas where there's fruit, most of this is agricultural, but you can't be moving it around or moving the fruit around or the fruit trees. It's a quarantine. And you should know about it. Residents should know about it because a lot of them do own fruit trees. And they start moving they remove the fruit from there and give it to people, and people remove it out of there, and then they can spread to other parts. So I think it's vitally important that you advise your customers that, hey, if you're in that county, there is a fruit fly quarantine and you should not be moving fruit around. It makes you guys an expert by dealing with your customers that way, staying on top of the information, knowing what's going on. Also, emerald ash borer in Georgia. There's a quarantine area. It's in the northern part of Georgia, probably north of 75 there, and I got a map there to it. But what's so vital about the emerald ash borer is the fact that this little buggard came into Detroit in 2002 and has moved this far south. And I've been keeping an eye on it for several years, as I know it's going to be coming into South Florida. And what people will do is, the way it gets transmitted very easily, one of the ways is people will find a tree that's knocked down, they'll cut it up, and move it across counties and move it across state lines as firewood, and then it gets, moves around. So I know it's a matter of time before it comes into Florida. The problem with these insects, is emerald ash borer, is when they come in, they don't only attack one species of plant, they attack many species of plant. Right now, the only treatment is trunk injection and root drenching to control it with a systemic product. So, keep an eye on it, put that map up so advise your customers. Be very careful about moving firewood around, especially in the northern parts where that's popular. Or moving trees around, and to keep an eye on it. There's a quarantine for those pests in those areas. And a new pest was discovered in California. Warren Savory and Bob Bryson discovered a new species of scorpion in the northeastern part of California in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. So you've got a new scorpion, Scorpionus. It's Vidae. Good luck with that one. But yeah, California has a new scorpion, and they're expecting, based on their studies, that they're going to be finding new species of scorpion in California more than this. In the headlines, we've got a new study out of New Jersey that I saw it when it first came out a week and a half ago, I think 2 weeks ago, and I looked at it, and I just hadn't had a chance to read through it, but I did get a chance to read through this study and find out, and basically the study does not reveal anything that we don't know as pest control operators. But here's the interesting part. Researchers in New Jersey were able to, in 43 low-income apartment buildings, which were about 2,372 individual apartments, found that 12% of the apartments had bed bug infestations, and that the rate of infestation varied. But the interesting part was that 47% were aware that the bed bugs existed. 49% were unaware that the bed bugs, and only 4% were unsure if they had bed bugs or not. And this is a shocking study that these scientists reveal because of the level, I think, of ignorance on behalf of public housing officials, public housing inspectors, or the level of incompetence of these people in public housing. And I'll tell you why I have this position. It's a very harsh position to have. But I think that we need to, it doesn't reveal anything to us. I do a lot of work in Overtown, Liberty, in pure, impoverished areas, because it already proves what I already know about that the most impoverished people in our state, in our city, in our country, have the least resources to handle something like this. And if you're in public housing now, it doesn't tell me, the study doesn't tell me where these were HUD-owned facilities or whether these were private Section 8 type of facility, or simply they were, just more impoverished. But usually if you're in an impoverished area, you're in some type of government assistance. And you don't have the capability of treating or preventing a lot of these problems that you find yourself in. And you will never have the money yourself to be able to deal with something like this. And if they're inspecting these units on a regular basis, and most of them, if they have pest control, they know about it. One of the shocking declarations was that the majority of the 291 infestations identified in the study were unknown to the housing authority in Hackensack, Irvington, and Patterson. Only Bayonne, which is Bayone, housing authority, had accurate information about the status of their bed bug infestation. The question is, what were they doing about it? And that's always the thing. And what happens with bed bugs is bed bugs are very, very, very expensive to control. We just finished doing, which to my point, we just finished doing a bed bug job. And what pisses me off the most, and I do get honked off at these things because it frustrates me to no end that you have a professional there doing your pest control. Supposedly he's a professional, and he was unable, and his best answer to you was spray every month. She's had this pest control, this client had this pest control person who she's had for many, many years. Comes in on a bi-monthly basis, sprays the entire house down. She got bed bugs. And his answer was, you just need to spray monthly. Not only does he charge a ridiculous low amount, but if he claims to be in the business for about 25 years, which this is what really honks me off. The fact that you're in the business, you've been in the business that long, you either are incompetent, you are ignorant, or you just really don't care. Because if they've been in the business that long, you should have basic bed bug knowledge to know that you will never control a bed bug infestation with a monthly spray. And the problem that they have is in most of public housing and most of these low-income areas, and most of the people doing this is exactly what they're doing. They're coming in, spraying these properties, if they're lucky, once a month. I see it in buildings. They come in, they go through the kitchen, spray the bathroom, and they're out of there. Why? Because the reality is that in public housing, nobody's really willing to pay what it takes to do real pest control, to do real IPM, to do real control services where they target the control, knowing that this will never work. And if you're in public housing and you put out bids and you get the lowest guy to come in and you sell a spray service with all the entomological information available to you from every major university in your state, if you just took 10 minutes to read one article on integrated pest management, you would know that what you're doing is an utter failure. It will never work. And yet you insist on doing this because the number one answer I get from all these people is we don't have the money and we don't have the resources. That's the bottom line. So you're going to opt for the cheapest thing that is the most toxic, by the way, in public housing. Why asthma is so rampant in public housing. Why we were working with a group of people which I tend to want to bring on when this is all over with. But to the utter denial that public housing doesn't have a real pest problem. And to walk into these units and see thousands and thousands of roaches dead all over the place, carcasses all over, roaches crawling all over surfaces at all hours of the day. For them to say they don't have a problem is sticking their head in the sand, not wanting to acknowledge it or admit it. And the problem is so prevalent in public housing that if you saw this, you would be disgusted as a human being seeing how these people live. That you couldn't, it's unconscionable to see how they live. So when a study like this comes out, which I do appreciate, by the way, I am not criticizing the study. The study is a scientific study to prove a problem, which I appreciate. The reality is that you will what they've recommended and what they've accomplished, you will never accomplish in public housing. They came out with a cost, which it always bewilders me how they come up with these numbers of cost. But they estimated that if the public housing would have done a correct inspection, the cost of doing an inspection in a unit is about $12, based on a $50 per hour cost of inspecting, and $8.50 of that was labor. The other $3.50 were for monitors that they installed. Well, first of all, if you've got monitors you need to install and then you need to come back and inspect, I don't know how you're getting $12 on a $50 per hour cost. But if they were going to do it themselves, that's one thing. I mean, if you can hire, $8, $10 an hour employees to stick these monitors and come in and monitor and then pull the sheets back and inspect, I guess you could do that for $50 an hour. If you're a professional pest control company, unless you hired an inspector, and that's all they did, where they carried no chemicals, no vehicle that had to be rigged up, and they're just walking around with a flashlight and inspecting, I guess you could do it. The problem is not the cost. The cost is reasonable. What astonishes me is the reality that nobody's really willing to pay for it. You're not going to get 43 buildings, so an average of 55 units per building is $661.95 per building to inspect, based on their numbers. If it's a HUD, you got to get procurement and agree that HUD is going to inspect those buildings. And then how often do you have to inspect them? Once a year? Every 6 months? Every 3 months? So they're looking at about $600 every time an inspection is done. Good luck getting them to pay for it. Second, if you got Section 8 housing, which is usually privately owned, you will never get those owners to pay for anything. Unless they are forced to repair something, they don't repair it. That's the reality. Utter disrepair. I walk into so many Section 8 buildings that the customers call me because the guy coming in once a month spraying, they got German roaches everywhere. And the guy can't control it with a spray. I get calls all the time. And when they realize it's going to cost them about $200 to get this problem controlled between 2 visits, because of the time it takes to actually do it to get control in a multi-unit housing, most of them never pay for it. They will still opt for another type of pest control service, another type of spray service, thinking that's what's going to. And I can get blue in the face and explain this to them until I'm blue in the face, and they don't get it. I can talk to owners of these buildings all day long until I'm blue in the face, and they will never spend the money to do it. That's the reality. And this is why this honks me off every time I see it. The fact that they know about this, the studies are there, the information is there, it all comes down to really spending the money to do it. And my opinion is, if you are taking government money, if you are a government-owned building, then the government should hold those buildings, those building management, whatever it is, to the same standards that they do in their public buildings, in their county buildings, because it's no different. It's a government facility. If you are a HUD building, you are a government facility. And why IPM isn't being practiced in these buildings, only in schools, only in their office buildings, and the heck with everybody else. That's the attitude. And I think that if you take government money, you take our tax money, you owe it to do a better job of really knowing what's going on. But the reality is that these people are living under, probably $2,000 to $3,000 a year of income. When you take food stamps and you take the amount of the housing and the living on whatever type of other income they're living off of, they're not working or whatever, because a lot of that is encouraged in the system. The study doesn't reveal anything we don't know as pest control operators. We know the problem exists. The problem is they can't get anybody to pay for it. And you can't get a real professional to go in there who has a conscience, who says, I don't want to contaminate everything. We want to take care of this problem so you can reduce your asthma, reduce your ailments, reduce your problems. And the reality is there isn't the money to do it. A bed bug job in one of those units, it's a 1-bedroom unit. Chances are you've got 2-3 kids living there. Mattresses are on the floor. They don't have bed frames. Clothes are everywhere. The hoarding issue is a mess. And you're trying to get control, and they can't afford to even wash their laundry. And you have to take everything in that apartment, in those drawers, take them out, have them washed, bring them back in different bags than you put them in, get them heat treated, and then you still have to treat the unit. And chances are somebody's sleeping on that couch. It's not like in a nice suburban neighborhood where the first time somebody gets bit, they call, they pick up the phone and say, I think I got bed bugs. I got bit. I found blood on my bed the first time. And they immediately get somebody in there to go take an inspection and get a look at it. They're sleeping on the couch. So chances are many of the rooms in the house, not only the bedrooms, are infested. And you're talking about a 1-bedroom with an infestation in the living room. To really, really, really control that problem, it's going to be easily 8 hours worth of work for 2 people to do those 2 rooms alone, to do it right, to do it textually, to do it the way the Cornell people have described. By the way, if you're looking for the best bed bug service, which is what we based our protocols on, is the Cornell University studies. Those guys are doing a bang-up job, especially stop pest in public housing. Those guys are doing a bang-up job of producing information. The problem is the people that need to know don't read it, or they don't care to read it. And then those that do read it said, yeah, it can't be done because we don't have the money to do it. See, that's the reality. And at one point, you got to shed light on this and say, yeah, you can do all the studies in the world you want. But unless somebody's really willing to pay for a real treatment, it's useless information. Not from what you discovered, but it falls on deaf ears. This is the reality. It's a great study. So what does it take to do a real bed bug job? If you've never done it, if you think you're doing bed bug control and you're not looking at the real protocols, and the studies that have been done and the resistance. We all know about the pyrethroid resistance. That's nothing new. Unless you have $50,000 to $100,000 to invest in bed bug heaters to do heating of a room, which is what it costs to buy one of those heaters. Those things are not $200 a piece. To invest in a trailer and the equipment to do an entire house, you're going to invest $100,000, $150,000 before you're done to try to get these heaters in. A lot of public housing places have bought their own heaters, and they're doing their own work, and I applaud them for that. The majority, I think, have their head in the sand. But what does it take? Well, first of all, you have to go in and do an inspection. And most of the time, we can find the bed bugs, in 10 minutes. We're in there. We can look, find it. The customer's getting bit. Other times we go in and there's other issues. We don't find bed bugs. I think the customer has probably diabetes, or they have some type of skin disorder, and when they relax at night and they go to sleep, their body starts to relax and their skin starts to tighten and things like that, and they feel itching and all of that. But we can't find a bed bug sometimes to save our life. Most of the time, if a customer complains about bed bugs, they found something, they got a sample. They send us a picture. Yep, that looks like a bed bug. Let's go over there. Yep, it is bed bugs. So what next? You got to get client cooperation. If the client thinks that you're going to come in with some type of magic spray and control their bed bugs, you're kidding yourself. I just did this house where 6 months he's been spraying that house every month for 6 months, and there's still bed bugs. There's still bed bugs everywhere. You're never going to control it. You give it up. If you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking of hiring a pest control company and they tell you they're going to spray your house for bed bugs, you run the other way. Shut your door, kick them out, because it's not going to happen. You need to be able to understand what you're getting into. And if you're going to do bed bugs, at least get the education to do it right. It's a tedious, time-consuming, expensive job to do. It is. It's not cheap. It takes hours. And the first thing you do is you take all the drawers, all the sheets, everything, and you have to remove it from the drawers. You have to remove it from the areas that are infected. You got to bag it. You got to get it washed, or if it's clean, then you have to put it in a dryer. And that will help kill a lot of the bed bugs. Then you can't put it in the same bags that you brought it in. You got to bring it in different bags. If you got to take it to a laundromat, that's different. And that's another risk, because if you leave those bags somewhere and somebody can pick up a bed bug, that's a problem. in laundromats that people are not considering. But if you're at home, you're talking about 2 to 3 days with one dryer and one washer, washing all those loads of laundry. That's a very expensive proposition for people. But if people are not willing to do it, we're not going to take on the bed bug job because we're asking to shoot ourselves in the foot. If the client cannot cooperate with the cleaning, it makes it very, very difficult. The second thing is vacuuming. You have to vacuum. You have to vacuum. And here's how you vacuum. You're going to vacuum the mattress, and you got to go with the top seam. You get one of those mattresses that have 15 seams in it, like they've got folds everywhere. Well, you got to do one by one. We got to do the top, then the bottom, then the second one top, then the second one bottom, then the bottom of the mattress. Then the areas where the stitching is, the heavy stitching in the middle, they love to get in there, and the eggs can get in there. You got to vacuum all that in a mattress. How long does it take to do a mattress? It all depends. But it's going to be one person can easily spend 20, 30 minutes on a mattress just vacuuming the mattress. Then you need to do the same thing to the box spring. Once you're done with that mattress, then you need to vacuum every crack and crevice in that bed, in that frame. Every crack and crevice in that room, on the baseboards. Every crack and crevice in the drawers. You got to pull the drawers out. Every crack and crevice, every corner. Inside the cabinet, every single corner, every single crack, every nail head, every screw head, vacuumed. Turn that piece of furniture around, vacuum the bottom of it. If they got picture frames, the picture frames have got to get vacuumed and checked. If you've got doors and closet doors with louvers, and they've got these little cracks in these louvers, you got to do every single one of those louvers. And that could take an hour to do a door, which costs a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 if they got louvered doors. Every little piece that you find that's a crack, that's a crevice around the windows. Some people put their headboard up against the window. You're going to have them in the window. You got to vacuum all that. What vacuum could you use? Well, they make a very good vacuum, the Atrix bed bug vacuum or bug vacuum. Very good. It's a sealed unit, top of the line, about $200. Backpack, battery powered. You can get the battery power extension on it. Very, very good vacuum. If you can't afford that and you already have a wet dry vac, just make sure you're not putting that wet dry back in your home after you're done using it. You got to put it somewhere else. And this unit, you can use a wet dry back with a bag and a 5-layer filter. Rigid makes a very good vacuum for that. And you can use that. And then you have to treat the lines and you have to treat everything else going in there because they're going to, attach themselves. You got to treat the back. And I treat the bag with Cymexa. And I just suck Cymexa down through the hose as the vacuum is sucking. It won't come out the other end. But after you've vacuumed everything, now you need to steam that mattress. And you need to steam that entire edge, the under edge, the same place you vacuumed, you got to steam. And you have to go slow because you got to get contact. That steam has to get contact and kill. So it can kill the eggs. It can kill the bed bug. And all the stitching, if you got one of those mattresses with 1,000 pieces of stitching, we do the entire mattress. Every side. And then after we're done with that, then you have to treat the mattress. And you can treat the mattress with a product like Bedlam. You can treat it with EcoRaider. You can treat it with any other type of product. I'm not a big fan of putting a lot of pesticide on a mattress, even though we're going to put a mattress cover on it. But you got to do those seams and treat each one of those seams. Whether you find the bed bug or not, here's the thing. Well, we didn't find any bed bugs. It doesn't matter. If you got bed bugs, you need to not take any chances with the protocol. You treat it anyway. SteriFab is another great product to use for that. A lot of people don't like it because it smells like alcohol, but it's really not that offensive. It evaporates very quickly. It dies very quickly, and you can treat with that. What can you use? Well, you can use a crack and crevice, the same crack and crevice device you're going to use. B&G makes 2 AccuSprayers that are wonderful because you can refill them. And you can use this to do the crack and crevice. Every single crack and crevice that you vacuum now has to be treated with a product. So every drawer, every crack in that drawer, all 4 sides at the bottom, everything, the screws, everything has to be treated with whatever product you choose. The frame has to be treated. Every crack in that frame, headboard, you got a picture frame, it has to be treated. You got to be able to use products that won't damage furniture and won't mark it and or anything. You're doing basically the back, the bottom, the inside, everywhere you treat it. You got to do that. You can use the AccuSprayer to do that. And then after you're done, you also got to do dusting in the voids. You got to dust those voids. I still use Cymexa. I love Cymexa for this, but you got to do a void treatment. And we made our own power treater because the ones that are on the market are very, very expensive. I bought one of the ones and the battery doesn't last and it's just a pain and it doesn't put out a ton of volume. So we made our own so we can really, really, really dust those voids and get penetration into the upper areas and the under areas and treat all those voids in the wall. And then also you're going to have to use, and I would recommend treating the attic so you don't get an up and over deal. So you treat the attic with Cymexa dust too. And B&G makes a great hand mini duster for it, and then they make the bulb dusters. And if you've got a lot of crack and crevices, you can use the brush system with the with Cymexa, and you brush it into areas. But everything has to get treated. Crack every void. Once you're done with that, you got to install mattress covers. Oh, the bottom of the box springs, if they're heavily infested, you'll have to remove all those staples, remove the lining, treat crack and crevice. If not, you can also do a void treatment with the Cymexa dust inside there, inside the box spring, and treat it with Cymexa. Then you're going to encase them. But before you encase them, you got to make sure that you protect the edges of those screws. Cover those screw heads up because you don't want to puncture the unit. I already found one that they put the bed and they zipped it on wrong and they, punctured the heck out of it, and it's useless. So you have to use 2 people. Usually for a bed bug job, it's not a one-person deal. You have to use 2 people to get it done because you got to be gently carrying all this around. One of the things that I always use is I use a bodysuit that I dispose of with foot and head to protect myself from getting a bed bug on me and then carrying it. If you wear jeans to one of these jobs and you get a bed bug in your shoe, or you get a bed bug that latches onto your clothing, you're going to take that sucker home with you. So you need to wear a disposable suit, get rid of it, dump it on site. Everything gets dumped on site. Nothing gets taken inside your van or taken, debris or anything like that. Just dump it, put it in a bag in the back of the truck and run away. But then what do you have to do? After you've done all this, you've treated everything and you've vacuumed and you've dusted and you've cracked and creviced every single thing in that room. Then you need to install monitors. If you can install the climb up monitors, I got a link to, by the way, I got links to all these products so you can take a look at them. Then you need to put the interceptors, which is what they use for the study. And the climb ups are really good. They can climb in, but they can't climb back out. It's very smooth surface. And then you put those monitors and you got to inspect that unit back, come in and inspect in about 2 weeks to see if there's any live monitor in those monitors anywhere. And then do another follow-up in about 30 days. And if you're still finding bed bugs, then you need to do a retreat. And then you still need to follow up in another 30 days. It isn't a set it and forget it. We did it. Now we're gone. And if you ever have another problem, give us a call. If you want to make sure that you took care of it, you got to do your own follow-up inspections. You can't leave that up to the customer. The customer doesn't know what they're looking for. So that is what's required. And this is the big problem that we did a 4-bedroom house just a couple of weeks ago. They've been spraying it for 6 months. Don't get control. That took 10 hours to do 4 bedrooms with 2 people. And that's a very, very expensive proposition. The average 4-bedroom house is going to cost about $2,000 to treat for bed bugs. And most people who are impoverished, they got a 4-bedroom house that will never afford to do a bed bug job. And there's nobody that can do it who has a license. Cheap. So it isn't like you're going to spend $200 on a unit. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost that building owner several $100s. And if you got a unit that's infested, well, guess what? You got to treat the unit next to that, the unit above that, the unit below, and the unit on the other side. If you've got one unit infested, you really got to start looking and inspecting and doing a void treatment at all the other units around it to keep it from spreading. So you're talking about doing possibly 5 total units if one of the units is in the mid-floor. And that is the reality of bed bug problems in our country, that, these areas are going to have serious, serious problems. And the people who own the buildings are never really willing to pay for what it really costs to really do a bed bug job and ensure that the bed bugs are under control. Because it is about monitoring and inspecting afterwards. And are they willing to pay for 3 times a year to come in and do a bed bug inspection 3 times a year and have $2,000 to $3,000 worth of budget to do inspections? Are they going to train their maintenance staff? Which is another big problem. I can't even get people, maintenance staff, to do foam sealing in these apartments. I tell them, look, you got all these voids, all these cracks, all these crevices. Can you foam seal? It's going to cost you maybe $1 a unit. And they say, we don't have the time, we don't have the money, we don't have the resources to do that. That's why we're hiring you to do pest control. And they're in such denial about what it really takes to do pest control in multi-unit housings. They don't want to. If they're saying, well, we hired you, we're paying you, $1 a unit. I mean, this is what it comes down to, $1 a unit, 75 cents a unit to take care of the bugs. It's your job to do it, not ours. And there's no cooperation in mind with these. It's a big difference when we're doing a luxury unit on Brickell, that has 40 floors and it's a $20,000 a year account because they're charging their residents, $1,000 to $1,500, $2,000 a month in maintenance fees to live in a $1 million unit. That's a big difference. When they're paying that kind of money, per tower, $10,000 a year in pest control. Then a 50 unit that they're paying $50 a month to $100 a month to get a guy to go in there and spray it because he was the lowest bidder. And that's the problem I have with these bid processes, is that you don't necessarily get the most qualified, the best person. You get the cheapest. So, I know this has been a big rant, but I really do get upset about this stuff because, I've lived in multi-unit housing. I was on welfare. I, as a child, lived through this. And I'm telling you, the way that these kids are living and the conditions they live under, nobody should live under those conditions. And with the amount of being the wealthiest country in the world, that we are tolerating these kinds of issues, having the ability, the science, and the means to control it. It isn't like we're in Africa trying to control malaria. This is the United States. This isn't a third world country that doesn't have resources. We have the resources. We have the knowledge. But again, government really doesn't manage anything well. And the failure of the welfare system in this country, this is a clear sign of that failure. And I really wish that you guys would open up your mouths about what's going on. Make it known. Because people live in denial in suburbia sometimes and don't understand what's really going on in these places. And they think it's just because the people, live that way. They blame the people. And I think the people sometimes are to blame. But the majority of the people in charge are the ones that are responsible. I thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for all your contributions that you make to the podcast. By the way, if you want to be on the podcast, if you've got a comment, you got a question, I haven't given out the phone number in a while. I forget. 707-395-7378. That's 707-395-7378. Give us a call. Leave us a voicemail. You can send it to questions@pestgeekpodcast.com. You can send an email. Go to our website, and there's a form there that you can fill out and give us your questions. Comment on Facebook. Comment on Twitter. We really do appreciate your contribution. Hey, guys, until next time, you have a great one. Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.